Hello and welcome to another Sell Well Online video, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the MC011 Your eBay selling account has been restricted. Now firstly, if you are watching this, I feel sorry because this has probably happened to you and you're probably freaking out. So I kind of wish you weren't watching this video, but here we are. Now I will say at the beginning that this video might be a bit waffly and detailed. But I'm really trying it not to be a rant. I don't want this video to be like, hey, eBay sucks and whatever, even though they kind of do. I'm trying to be factual, and sometimes I need to explain things in detail to sort of get my point across. And the main point really of this video, if anything, is that it can happen to anyone. Your account isn't always restricted because you're a dodgy person, you're doing dodgy things. The sad reality is that it can happen to anybody, no matter how hard you try and how honest you are. The second thing is that in this video, I'm not going to show any specific messages and things that I have or other people that I know have received from eBay, because I don't want them to be able to trace it back to any accounts. Um, Even though a lot of messages are from eBay, are just copy and paste, some of them are a bit more tailored. Um, because yeah, if they were able to trace it back, then knowing how petty eBay are, they would probably restrict accounts again. So but I'm not lying. Everything I'm saying in this video is true, and if you don't believe me, then that's your choice. I mean, at some point you'll probably realize sooner or later that I'm not lying. So in this video, I want to cover three things. The first is to uh, kind of more for new users who are researching about selling on eBay, which is what it actually is and why it's so nasty. If this has already happened to you, then you probably know all about that, but I still want to sort of cover that in this video. The second thing is what you should actually do if this happens to you immediately in the short term. And then the third thing, and probably the most important thing and yet most difficult thing, is how do you actually go about resolving it. So let's talk about the first thing. So what it actually is. Now, eBay, it is a great site. You can sell a lot of things. You can make a lot of money. But this thing here, the MC011, or I'm just going to refer to it as restricted account, is a very nasty thing. And it's probably the worst thing that can actually happen to you if you are selling on eBay. One thing to get clear from the beginning is some people say, oh, if you sell on eBay, you're your own boss and, the world is great. eBay is your boss. That's kind of how you have to look at it. They hold you accountable. They boss you around. They tell you whatever they want you to do. You are working for eBay and you're paying them, fees and things like that. You're operating on their site, so under their rules. So you really are kind of like living under their house. It's like you have to answer to your parents when you live at home. So eBay really is your boss and they can do whatever they want. So what actually happens if your account is restricted? So firstly, your account isn't actually necessarily closed. It's not like your account is wiped from existence. You still have your account. You can probably still send messages and things like that. However, your listings would have been ended. So customers can no longer see your listings because they have been ended, and you can't sell on the site anymore. There are mainly three big problems because of this. The first is the brand damage. This video, like I'm kind of wording this in a way like you have a big store, you have lots of items, you've been operating on eBay for years, right? So you have brand damage. Customers will message you and say, hey, what happened to all your listings? You do have repeat customers. There's people who trust in you and your brand, even though the brand is kind of eBay. So you'll have that. And if they do message you, you have to think carefully how you want to respond to that. And I don't recommend saying, oh, my account was restricted. Tell them, something waffly and maybe not something that's strictly true. Tell them, oh, well, you're on vacation. Or tell them, you're evaluating your business in the future and your strategy or what, something like that. But I don't recommend saying, oh, my account was restricted because I did something wrong. The second thing is that your selling history will be gone. So, you've probably sold on eBay for many years. You've got some really good listings that have sold countless times. You might have like a sales, when you go on eBay and you can see, 100 people have purchased this item. That will all be gone because the listing has been ended. All your listings have been ended. So even if you do get your account reinstated, you will have to then relist those items. Once the listing is ended, it's ended. There's no way to resuscitate it. So instead of people going to your items and saying, "Oh, hey, this is a big seller with a good reputation, and they've sold, 100 of this item before," they're going to go to your listing. It's going to be a new listing, and it's going to have no history. And so that is really, damaging if you have, sold on eBay for a long time. And the third thing, and probably the biggest problem, is you've now got stock lying around that you can't sell. You know, you probably have like a office rental agreement. You're paying employees. Um, Even if you run your business out of home, you're going to have all this stock now that you can't sell because the way that you were selling that through eBay is now gone. So it is a very stressful and very bad thing that can happen to you. The next thing is eBay will give you no warning. They will give you no please explain. They will give you no courtesy notice of, "Oh, hey, we're concerned about this. Can you address our questions?" They just do it. They just cut your head off and worry about the consequences after. And even worse, they won't give you a detailed reason. Now, the reason they don't give you a specific reason why your account has been restricted, according to what communications I've had with eBay, is that if they tell you why, then you can circumvent that in the future, which is kind of 10% a valid point and 90% bullshit. Um, so it's like going into work one day, your boss says you're fired, he doesn't give you or she doesn't give you any reason, you're walked off the premises, and that's it. And then you have to pick up the pieces. Maybe you take them to like a fair work ombudsman, or maybe you sue them for unfair dismissal or something. But like they act first and they worry about the consequences after, because at the end of the day, it's your problem. They also, yeah, they don't give you any direct email. They don't give you any contact means. You can't like call them up about it. You can't go and chat about it. You can only respond to the email. They'll probably respond to you in 3 days, and they'll tell you like something that's not even helpful. Say, "Oh, can I please understand why my account's been restricted?" And they'll say something like, "Please refer to the original email." Um, so yeah, it's a really bad, nasty thing that can happen to you, and it is a risk if you are going to sell on eBay. And I should stress as well that this can happen on other sites as well, like Amazon. But I'm going to keep this video to eBay. So let's talk about what should you do when you get the message. Now, this is only my personal advice. um, But the first thing I would do is cut your store package. So if you are actually paying, which you probably are, a store subscription, cancel that subscription. And it's best to do this rather than do this yourself in the settings. Apparently, or sometimes this can happen at the end of the month. Actually call eBay up or do it on chat and request them to cancel your store subscription. And then you can confirm if that has been done in your settings. The reason for this is you're paying eBay for the privilege or the right to list items on their site. If they have taken away that privilege, then you're paying for something that you're not getting. It's like paying for a gym membership and then the gym like suspends you from coming to their gym. Why would you continue paying your gym membership? So cancel the store package. Now, as long as you restart your subscription again within 30 days, then everything goes back to the way it was before. So you've really got nothing to lose by doing this. Now, even if 30 days has passed, you can still, of course, start that subscription anytime that you want anyway. You may have to like re-put in your store categories and things like that, but so be it. The other thing that I really want to stress here is that even if you are reinstated, even if your account is reinstated and it's not restricted from selling, you will still have a very, very tight selling limit. So any account, no matter how big or small, has a selling limit, right? And that will depend on a whole bunch of things: your seller performance, your sales history, all that kind of thing. Now, as an example, for me, I had a selling limit of well over $1 million, right? So eBay, and that includes sales as well, right? So the amount that you've both sold within the month plus the amount that you have actively listed on the site, that is your selling limit. I had a selling limit of over $1 million. It was after my account was reactivated, it was less than 1% of that. So it was like $10,000. So you think about that. If you have even 1,000 listings, which is actually kind of small for somebody who's making at least a reasonable living on eBay. Let's say you have 1,000 listings, you have a quantity of two on each of those listings. So you've got 1,000 listings, but 2,000 items, if that makes sense. Then you can only list an item worth $5, right? I mean, who would sell anything on eBay for $5 when you've got to pay, shipping costs, eBay fees, PayPal fees, overheads, cost of goods, etc., right? Now you could argue, well, pick your top 10 or your top 50 or your top 100 items and list those and start with that. Yeah, you can do that, but at the same time, um, your sales are going to be drastically cut, even if you can get your account reinstated, which of course is the aim. So it really is, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it really is a shitty situation to be in when you get one of these messages, because, it's, well, can you get your account reinstated? And even if you can, you basically can't really sell anything anyway. So that's my first advice. Cut your store package. If you can get your account reinstated, then so be it. The other advantage to that is that, and I want to stress this point, don't ever think you are too big for eBay. Even if you're a big seller, like let's say you're selling $100,000 of stuff on eBay a month. I know some smart eyes are going to say, "Oh, well, that's not big on eBay." But let's just take that as an example, right? You're selling $100,000 a month. eBay fees are roughly 10%, right? So that's $10,000 you're paying to eBay a month in fees. eBay make billions of dollars, right? They're not going to reinstate your account on the argument that you're so important to them, right? So don't ever think, or even it's not even really worth using that line. Well, hey, I'm too big, right? But in saying that, by cutting your store subscription, it does, and this is only a very, very, very small plus, but it does remind eBay that they are losing money, because I believe in a lot of cases eBay accounts are restricted when they really shouldn't be. The seller hasn't really done anything specifically wrong, and so eBay will like look at it and be like, well, you know what, like this person, like maybe it was just one specific thing that they restricted your account on. They're like, well, they've been selling on 10 years, they're a good seller, yada yada yada. Do we really want to lose their business? Again, it's not a main point, very small point, but at least it does just remind eBay of that. The second thing I recommend, if this does happen to you, is to not pay any fees to eBay. Now, this is a bit of a tricky one because you'll probably have an automatic payment method set up, which is probably your PayPal account. And if you try and remove that, or you try and change it, eBay will say you can't because there are active listings. Now, when they say active listings, they don't actually mean active listings on the site that customers can buy from, because of course they've deactivated all of your listings. They've ended all your listings. What they mean by active listings is basically, you owe us money, bitch. That's what they're saying. So active listings meaning listings that haven't been paid for. That's their professional way to say that. So probably the only way that you can really get around this, and I'd be very happy if someone leaves a comment and says there's another way you can get around it, but probably the best way to get around it is take all the money out of your PayPal account, and that way they can't get the fees from you. Now, there is a problem with doing this, is because even your account is restricted, you of course have a past sales history, And so people can still open cases against you either in eBay or PayPal. Now, if this happens and you've already the account, the money is already automatically frozen. So if you have zero money in your account, then that means that it will go into overdraft, and that can have some consequences. PayPal may charge you fees. It's not really an eBay problem; it's a PayPal problem, right? Or they may like restrict or suspend your account. And it is worth noting that eBay, they will send you some pretty nasty emails saying, hey, you owe us money, and we're going to come after you and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, I still recommend doing this. And again, hopefully your account, you can work through the issues. You will get your account reinstated, and in that case, I guess you pay the fees, whatever. Um, but otherwise, I kind of say, well, screw eBay. Don't pay for the fees, even though technically, yeah, you owe the money because it was for sales before the account was restricted. But I mean, is it morally correct either that they've just shut your whole business that you've worked years on without any sort of warning or any sort of proper chance to deal with it before they actually did that? So they're the two things I recommend you doing, like pretty much immediately if you see the message. Cut your store package and take the money out of PayPal. Um, to get rid of that problem I said about overdraft, maybe leave a little bit of money, and I think that would work. So let's say you owe eBay $1,000, keep like $100 in the PayPal account, because if someone does, open a case or something, it's not going to go into overdraft. But the payment to eBay should still fail because there's insufficient funds. So now to the last part, and arguably the most important part, is, well, how can you resolve it? Now, of course, it's going to depend on, it's going to be a case by case thing. Um, eBay does close accounts or restrict accounts for different things. So I can only sort of respond in generic ways. And secondly to that, I can't, give you a 100% method to get your account reinstated. But the the best advice I can give is to basically jump through their hoops and respond to whatever it is that they're asking you. The email that you got should actually contain, a request, and they'll say, we want to see this, or we want you to do this. And, you know, basically, you're probably going to have to do whatever they're asking you to do. Um, but it usually is not going to be an easy thing, right? So if you can't do what they're asking you to do, or even if you can, I recommend in the first instance, message them and, kind of reason with them. And basically, you're going to have to just kiss their ass. Now, when I say kiss their ass, I don't mean actually um, just say, oh, I'm sorry, please reinstate my account. That will look like, one, you are a bad guy and you did something wrong, and two, you're kind of childish. What I mean by is just kind of, acknowledge. I mean, I hate to admit it, but they've probably restricted your account for some reason. There's probably, again, it might be 90% bullshit, but there's probably some, 10% validity in there of why they have actually restricted your account. So try and read through the lines. Try and understand why they have actually done this, and acknowledge that you understand what is important to them, which is the customer, the buyer. It's all about the buyer on eBay. eBay, they don't give a shit about the seller, basically. And there's heaps of reasons why I could explain that, which is not important really for this video. But they want to protect buyers. They want to make sure that buyers can purchase on eBay with confidence. So acknowledge that to eBay. Tell them that you understand that it's important to them, and stress that it's also important to you. And then actually try and respond to what their concern is, and be firm and be factual. Don't try and deflect the blame. Sometimes you kind of will have to, but do it in a very factual and sort of professional manner. And that's the best way that I can recommend doing it. So to kind of get, and maybe this is a little bit too specific given that I know this has already been a long video, but probably the two, I'm guessing, most common reasons why an account can be restricted is if too many cases have been opened, um, or perhaps a Vero takedown. So let's talk about the first one, if too many cases have been opened. Now, when I say too many cases open, I don't really mean too many cases open, because in a lot of cases, or in a lot of times that the account is restricted, it's a very small number. But eBay doesn't tend to deal in percentages, they tend to deal in absolutes. So for example, if you sell, like, I mean, in my case, it was literally like 1% of customers opened a case or had a problem. 1%, right? So, which is very normal. You think of a bricks and mortar store, people complain about, something broke, or it was the wrong size and they make up something or whatever. I don't think 1% is a big number. But let's say you're selling 10,000 items a month. Well, 1% is 100 purchases, right? So eBay doesn't look at it and say, oh, you only had 1% of people have a problem. That's good. They say, hey, there's 100 customers that didn't like your service or your way of doing business. And there are 100 customers that may not ever come back for a second time, right? So that's all they care about, the likelihood that a buyer is going to come back again. If you are jeopardizing that, then they will come down on you like a ton of bricks. And if you actually look in the seller performance things criteria to be a top rated seller, it's very strict. It's like 0.3 of transactions in a 12-month period. It's very, very strict. They'll say usually it's like 2 defects or 0.3% of total transactions. So that's how seriously eBay take it. They don't care if buyers are screwing you over. They don't care if you're in the right. That's what they're concerned about. So in the cases like in my case, 100% positive feedback, zero defects, literally zero defects in my sale performance. But they said that there were like 1%, or they said that there were too many cases, in quotation marks, too many cases opened against me. And so they were requesting like heaps and heaps of paperwork around like all of my transactions and proof that I had sent like all the items and like all of the scans of the shipping receipts and everything. Like, it's, if you're selling a lot of items, that is a very, very big request to make. And even if you can supply that, um, it's an incredibly like time consuming and difficult thing to do. And you're talking like 3 months or something of history, or even more. Um, so, but like I said, really your only hope is you give them what they want, or you send them a message and try and reason with them. The reason actually why I had, again in quotation marks, too many cases opened against me was because eBay's models were not correctly calculating the shipping times. So I was using, for example, a shipping method that would say 10 to 15 days, and eBay's models were predicting estimated delivery times of like 5 to 11 business days. So like their worst case was like just slightly better than an absolute best case. And I had even actually informed eBay of this problem. I had reported it to them. I'd followed up several times with them to fix it. eBay had admitted that it was wrong, and and they never fixed it. And that was actually the reason that I was getting, again in quotation marks, too many cases open against me. So it goes back to the point that I said at the beginning of this video, which is that even if you are an honest person and you're doing everything right, or you're trying to do everything right, then it's still these things can still happen. The second one, which is the Vero takedown. So Vero takedowns are basically when um, I'm going to use a specific example. Let's say you're selling Gucci. I don't sell Gucci, but just as an example, right? Gucci contact eBay and they say this seller is selling our products and they're not allowed to. and eBay take it off, and you get a big slap across the wrist. Now, just because you get a V-Ray takedown doesn't necessarily mean your account is restricted, but this is one of the reasons that it can happen. Now, it's important to note that eBay do not actually check the validity of the claim. They don't want to get sued. They don't want to deal with Gucci. They would much rather deal with you, who's just some shit kicker from nowhere, right? So if a company like Gucci comes along and requests a takedown, then eBay will do it. They don't even check whether it's valid or not. And the sad thing is, a lot of the time, like companies like Gucci, they don't even contact eBay directly. They actually hire third-party companies to be checking and scanning sites for them, and so these companies are actually paid kind of on commission or whatever. So they have, like, there's kind of a conflict of interest that they're deliberately trying to get takedowns so they can go back to Gucci and say, hey, well, we saved you because we got this seller shut down, when in fact the seller should never have been shut down. And again, similar to an account restriction, eBay kind of act first and then worry about the consequences later. And again, they're much rather happier to deal with you, who's a nobody, than some big company like, like Gucci or whatever. So again, you have to just kind of go through the process. It's a painful process, but deal with eBay and argue with eBay and tell them that, because actually there's no law that says that you can't sell Gucci products on eBay, right? But where they might get you on a technicality such as maybe you used an image that was from the official site, and so that's a breach of copyright or something. Or I know in Europe it is much stricter, and the EU is a lot tougher on these kind of things. So I actually don't recommend that you sell brand products to customers in Europe, and clearly state that on the listing and actually restrict it in your settings. You can do that. I'm not going to tell you how, but it's very easy. You go into your account settings and you block countries from Europe. But it is quite common that there are V-Ray takedowns that are not valid, and so you have to, again, just deal with eBay and say, hey, I didn't do anything wrong, actually. They may have told you I did, but I didn't. And again, be very factual, acknowledge their concern, and yada yada yada. What I said about the message with eBay. So I think the principles are kind of the same. Even if it was another reason that your account was restricted, use the same kind of principle and logic. Try and understand firstly why your account was restricted, because again, they won't tell you directly, and then try to deal with it in acknowledge their concern and try to tell them, hey, I'm on the same page as you here. Our interests are the same, and this is the problem. So anyway, I hope that video was helpful. I know it was a very long video. I know there's a lot to sort of stomach and consume, and it wasn't a fancy video with flashy graphics and all the rest of it. The sad reality of the situation is that it's a really shit situation to be in. It's a really shit thing to happen to you. And if you are going to sell on eBay and you're researching whether you should sell on eBay or not, you definitely have to consider it as a risk to your business. And you might think, well, oh, I just create another account. Well, if they can link it to the account that was restricted, they'll restrict that too. So, and there's many cases where people have got like 2 or 3 accounts for valid reasons. Might be a personal account, business account, whatever. And one account's restricted, the other one's automatically restricted. eBay's smart enough to detect, okay, the name is the same, the address is the same, the PayPal account's the same. They can pick these kind of things up. They may even be able to detect it from the IP address or the internet that you're using. So they will pick these things up if you just create another account. So it is a really nasty thing to happen. You need to consider and evaluate those risks if you are going to sell on eBay. If this has already happened to you, again, my best advice is to just jump through eBay's hoops, try to understand what the problem is, and work with eBay to get it resolved. And the other thing that I would actually recommend doing for both, if you are thinking of selling on eBay or if you are selling on eBay and this happened to you, is always have a backup. Try and have a plan B or a plan C. If you're selling on eBay, also sell on another online platform, whatever it may be. Whether it's your own store, your own website, whether it's another business like Amazon or Shopify. And again, the same thing can happen to you on these sites as well. But competition is increasing. The days of just Amazon and eBay, even though they are still two of the big players, those days are slowly dying. And there are a lot more other ways that you can sell online. Creating your own website has never been easier. Sites like Facebook now, you can actually sell things on Facebook. And there are various pros and cons to all those things, which I'm not going to go into. But try not to have like eBay and that's it, because again, you can wake up one day and it's all gone. So anyway, thanks for listening to the end. Kudos if you are, and I really sincerely hope that you can get your issue resolved.